On September 23rd of 2016, a 20-year-old went to his parents' home to eat dinner and also secretly steal a rifle. What he would do a couple of hours later was absolutely sickening. This is the massacre no one speaks about. Hello, friend, and welcome to High Time Crime. My name's Joel, and on here I specialize in true crime and also loving life. Gosh, just love life. But anyway, today we're going over a, once again, not very covered case that you'd imagine would be given the circumstances. Arjan Chetin was born on August 20th of 1996 in Adana, Turkey, to his mother Hatice. Arjan's biological father isn't named, and he left very early into his life. When Arjan was born, he was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome because his mother had been drinking when she was pregnant. Arjan also had some sort of birth injury that made him suffer nerve damage. This made it so he couldn't fully lift his left arm. His left shoulder was also significantly smaller than his right one. Not only this, but money was a huge problem for his family. That actually reminds me of a story. So a couple of years ago, I got a credit card for the first time, and me being young and naive was a recipe for disaster. I decided I wanted a microphone that I was eyeing up for a while, but I couldn't afford. So I thought it would be a good idea to put it on credit. But then, all of a sudden, I randomly lost my job. This payment then became a huge issue for me, as it was almost $1,000 that I didn't and wasn't going to have. I was stressing out, time was getting near for me to pay it, and I just didn't know what to do. This is when I wish I had found a service like PDS Debt. If you've got credit card debt, medical bills, or personal loans, I'm with you on that one. It's like your money's just disappearing all of the time, and none of it's stretching how far it needs to. But PDS actually gets it. They don't just throw numbers at you, they build a real plan that fits your life. No cookie cutter stuff, just a legit path to getting out of debt. And even if your credit's not perfect, they will find a way to work with you. There is no minimum credit score. You can save more money, pay bills off faster, and finally stop living paycheck to paycheck. All you gotta do is go to pdsdebt.com/hightimecrime. It takes like 30 seconds or so to see your options. Anyone with enough eligible debt can qualify. So stop letting your money disappear and check out your free debt analysis today. That's pdsdebt.com/hightimecrime. The longer you wait, the more it costs you. So take back control of your life now. The longer you wait, the more it costs you. So start now and take back control of your life. But while in Turkey, Arjan had 3 uncles him and his mother lived with. They were named Ismail, Raphael, and Abraham. One of them would later end up in jail for murder, by the way. But apparently they were up to Arjan and his mother, and they'd slap them around, one time even pushing Arjan into a wall. So in 2003, around the age of 7, Arjan and his mother would immigrate to the United States. Hatice would then get married to a man named David, and I believe their relationship actually began in Turkey due to the wording of everything. David was an aircraft mechanic in the military, and I think he was stationed there, but then he got stationed in Oak Harbor, Washington. So because of that, Arjan and his mother moved with him to the United States. How Arjan was as a child isn't heavily documented, besides a little bit, but we do know a lot about his high school years and beyond. During his freshman year of high school, Arjan did a lot of things. This included playing football, wrestling, and joining the Navy Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps. He also posted videos on his YouTube account, Arjan Chetin, specifically videos about Call of Duty.
Do you guys like my armor? Do you think it's sexy? Because I think it's pretty sexy. I look like a gladiator. Yes, no, put some comments in the below if you think it's sexy as hell.
Arjan in school played football his freshman, sophomore, and junior years and wrestled those years as well. He placed 4th in regionals and 10th grade wrestling. Arjan for his freshman and senior years got straight A's, and then during his sophomore and junior years, he got straight F's because he said he was rebelling during that time. That these years is when he really started to take drugs and drink, specifically Adderall, weed, and beer. While in his sophomore year, or 2013, Arjan was still in the NJROTC, but he got dropped after just a few months because he was resistant to authority and unwilling to follow instruction, according to instructors. They said he ignored uniform and grooming standards and kept his hair long and refused to polish his shoes. Arjan also talked back to senior cadets and the naval science instructor, and he skipped 2 mandatory Saturday drill meets. Not only this, but a Navy recruiter had also told Arjan that he would be medically disqualified if he ever tried to actually enlist due to his permanent nerve damage from his birth injury. Arjan felt like it was pointless to continue, and from this point forward, he quit the program. That year, or 2013, he also got his first job working at some China-style buffet as a busboy and a dishwasher. By his junior year, or 2014, Arjan was now about 17 years old, and that spring he began working at Whidbey Island NAS Commissary as a grocery bagger from 4 to 8 p.m. most nights. This is where he would meet a girl named Molly, and she was also a grocery bagger. They worked together with a few other people, and specifically 2 employees mentioned this. I'm not sure what the exact context is or why Arjan said these things, but in the presence of both of those employees, while they were sorting carts and tips at the end of their shifts, Arjan said that he could kill people when he gets angry, and that if anyone pisses him off, he'll just kill them. Apparently, one of the employees then challenged Arjan about what he said, and he smiled and said that people are lucky he stays calm most of the time. Now, Molly and Arjan started to really hit it off, and these coworkers one day pulled Molly aside and warned her. They said verbatim, "Be careful dating Arjan. He says scary stuff about killing people when he's mad." Regardless, Molly decided to continue to pursue a relationship with Arjan. Before Molly, I'm unsure if he was ever in any other relationships, but I do know that he had a relationship with a guy in high school. But by the summer, these 2 were dating and posting each other on social media. A few months later in the fall, their senior year started, and people would see them at school and around town together. Arjan also got fired during this time from the grocery store because he kept trying to call out at the last minute. By late 2014, though, something really changed in Arjan, at least on the outside, further. Who knows how he truly was on the inside? But Molly mentioned that at some point, Arjan found his biological father on Facebook and figured out that he was tied to bad people in Turkey who were a part of ISIS. That Arjan began to message these people and that she couldn't understand what was being said, but that she could see the chats on his phone. Not only this, but Molly said Arjan began to watch beheading videos every day and followed news about ISIS constantly, that he would show her clips and talk about them. She would stay with him for a bit longer, but in October, Arjan would have his first bad run-in with the police. On October 14th, Arjan wanted to go see Molly and drive his mother's car, but she refused to let him. Arjan blew up from this situation and smashed a ton of furniture and ran to try and get the guns that were under his parents' bed. His stepfather managed to restrain him, and his mother called the police. This day, he was booked and charged with 4th-degree assault or domestic violence and 3rd-degree malicious mischief. The next day, on October 15th, Arjan saw the judge, and he was given a 72-hour no-contact order for both parents and issued a no firearms condition. Arjan got released from jail but couldn't return home and had to move into a nearby motel. 2 days later, on October 17th, the temporary order got converted to a pretrial, no contact order, and for about the next 2 months, Arjan would stay at the motel. On December 2nd of 2014, a hearing happened for Arjan's case, and his parents asked to lift the no contact order, and asked that Arjan be allowed to come home. Arjan moved back in, and the order was lifted. Sometime around here, Arjan, now 18 years old, began working at a local auto repair shop. In January of 2015, Molly would break up with Arjan because of his violent behavior and how much worse it was getting. This was due to what he was watching and getting into, and when they would, he would choke her until she passed out and leave bruises all over her. A few days after this, he threatened to rape and kill her on Facebook if she kept ignoring him. Molly, however, moved on, and by February, she moved out of Oak Harbor to the Tacoma area and then began dating a new guy in March. Molly tried to pay no mind to Arjan, but he would constantly send her threats, things about and other scary things, such as how he abused his dog. Molly also began to work at a Macy's, and this will make sense later. So in February of 2015, Arjan had a compliance review on his case with his parents, and the judge converted his charges to a 2-year deferred prosecution as long as he attends monthly counseling and abstains from alcohol, drugs, and firearms. Now, I want to give you a bit further of an idea of who exactly Arjan was and was becoming during 2015 to 2016. Some of his favorite hobbies were paintballing. He did that consistently. He played video games basically all the time, and he also started to become, radicalized. Arjan was a Sunni Muslim who read the Quran 5 times a day, praying constantly to something called the 5 Pillars. He was an increasingly violent guy with a very short temper. At some point in time, it's not very clear when, but he found a browser called Tor. Tor is a free software and open network that enables anonymous communication online. Arjan began to use Tor and then something called Hidden Wiki to look at magazines involving radical. One of the magazines apparently said that they need to murder people for radical. And Arjan started to get very heavily inspired to do something similar of his own. He started to get involved in being a radical, which he said meant to him to kill the. Infidel is a term used usually negatively for someone who doesn't believe in a particular religion. Essentially, to make it simple, Arjan started to become radicalized by propaganda, and at some point in time, he decided he himself was going to do something evil. He said that it was specifically when he downloaded all of the magazines. But before Arjan would do anything of that magnitude, he would do some other atrocious things first. First off, like I said, he continued for the next year to harass his ex-girlfriend, saying crazy things. Arjan also, in the beginning of 2015, walked off his job at the repair shop for some reason, so he basically quit. This year, Arjan, who was 19 years old now, was set to graduate, but 2 weeks before that, on Wednesday, May 27th, something happened. Arjan was in his last period class of Algebra 2, and he was sitting behind 2 girls. During class, he took off his shoes and slid his bare feet up each girl's calves and inner thighs. He also kept going after they told him to stop. Witnesses of this said that Arjan was staring at them in a sexual way and touching himself. This day, later in the afternoon, Arjan was arrested on 2 counts of 4th-degree assault with sexual motivation. Not only this, but the principal of the school issued a 10-day emergency suspension for him. About a week later, on June 4th, the principal converted the suspension to a long-time exclusion that would last through the last day of school. This basically meant that Arjan wasn't allowed on campus anymore, and he was set to graduate 4 days later on Monday, June 8th of 2015, which he technically did, but he wasn't allowed to attend the ceremony or walk across stage. So during the summer of 2015, Arjan was working some sort of gig of odd jobs like dump runs that he picked up off Craigslist. This is primarily what he was doing, besides being radicalized on the internet and other things like smoking, drinking, and being creepy. 11 days after Arjan was set to graduate was Friday, June 19th, and this day Arjan decided to smoke some weed in his garage. His parents found him doing this, and they confronted him, and a huge argument ensued. This exchange made its way to the kitchen, and it was mainly between Arjan and his stepfather. Arjan 2 times leaned in and kissed his stepfather on the lips. His stepfather pushed him away when he did that, and this is when Arjan punched him in the face twice, splitting his lip open. Arjan's parents then called the police, and when they arrived, they talked to Arjan, who was laughing about the situation. They arrested him on 4th-degree domestic violence, and Arjan stayed in jail that night. The next morning, he had a court appearance, and the judge issued a 72-hour no-contact condition and a no firearms order. Also, I'm not sure exactly when, but Arjan was also prescribed Prozac, Concerta, and Guanfacine. 2 days later, on June 22nd, another hearing happened, and Arjan's stepfather asked that the no-contact order be dropped because he doesn't want Arjan barred from the house. For the next 2 months, Arjan pretty much stayed at home, but he started weekly anger management sessions. Nothing really happened during this time frame. But on August 18th of 2015, a compliance review hearing happened for Arjan from what he did in June, and the judge issued a comprehensive psych evaluation that he would need to get done by 45 days. Or, to make it simple, Arjan had to get everything started for the evaluation. So before this psych evaluation could even take place, Arjan, on Monday, November 16th of 2015, was at his parents' home when he decided to try and take himself out with his medication. His parents called 911 after finding him halfway responsive, and Arjan was then placed on an involuntary treatment act and a danger to self hold, and he was sent to the Fairfax Behavioral Health Hospital. The next morning, on November 17th, one of the nurses filed a court petition to make Arjan stay at the facility for 2 weeks because she was concerned Arjan was going to self-harm and that he was gravely disabled because of a mental disorder. This 14-day stay was approved, and Arjan received a bunch of therapy and more medicine. He got out on November 30th and was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, combined type, and cannabis use disorder. A couple of days later, on December 4th, at about 12:45 a.m., Arjan was driving and he was drunk and weaving all over the place. Police saw this and pulled him over. He reeked of alcohol and he failed their breathalyzer and common test. Arjan blew a .092 and got cited for a DUI and driving with no proof of insurance. He got booked into jail and was released the next morning with a trial date for December 22nd. That day, Arjan pleaded not guilty, and not really much came from this. His pre-trial got set to January 26th of 2016. Now, in January, a couple of things would happen. First, on January 11th, Arjan got a job working at Wendy's as a prepper and on the grill. At the end of the month, on the 26th, Arjan's first pre-trial came, and once again, nothing really came from it. About a day or so later, Arjan began to sign paperwork to get a small 1-bedroom apartment. His stepfather co-signed for him, and the move-in date was on February 15th. Arjan moved into the new apartment, but he would still eat dinner with his parents 2 to 3 times a week. Arjan, by March, got another job working at a Mexican-Asian buffet as a dishwasher, though he would quit not too long after. In April, Arjan had a bunch of therapy sessions and an 8-hour mandated substance abuse class on the 23rd. In May, on the 6th, Arjan had another court day, and the judge signed a 2-year deferred prosecution order covering basically all of the things he committed or did. If Arjan were to obey all the conditions set by the judge until May 6th of 2017, every misdemeanor would be dismissed and he wouldn't be convicted. The conditions for this were that Arjan had to attend a weekly behavioral class. He had to have a weekly medicine check. He had to take 1 substance abuse class per week and 2 sober support meetings per week. He had to have 2 random drug tests every month, and he had an absolute ban on guns. In June, Arjan worked about 100 hours at Wendy's and 55 hours at the buffet. This month he just worked a lot, and he played a lot of video games, and he also tested negative twice. Now in July, Arjan also tested negative, and this month he was pretty heavily on social media. On his Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr accounts, he was posting about ISIS and their leader, and also serial killer memes. Both his Facebook and Twitter accounts were deleted, but his Tumblr is still up and those images are still available. Arjan was clearly preparing to do something, but it wasn't fully planned. It was more like a thought that was just deeply rooted into him, but not very well thought out. On August 10th, or just about, Arjan walked into a gun store and tried to buy a Smith & Wesson 9mm pistol, but the clerk informed him that a background check and waiting period were to take place. Arjan decided to just leave the store because he knew that he would fail that background check instantly. By August 25th, a court review came, and the judge for Arjan said that he was in full compliance and getting better, that he was doing everything right. The next review was set for May 11th of 2017, or the next year. But in early September of 2016, Arjan decided to sell his Xbox 360 and 4 games on Craigslist for $120. Arjan continued to work at only Wendy's and would be scheduled there for the rest of the month. He did all the things he needed, such as a urine test, weekly meetings, etc. Now on September 15th, Arjan apparently sent his neighbor a crotch picture on Snapchat, and she complained to their apartment manager. I don't think anything came from that, besides that she blocked him. But Arjan spent a lot of those days looking up terrible things that involved. Not only that, but he also kept posting about it all over Facebook and a bit of Twitter and his Tumblr. On September 23rd of 2016, Arjan Chetan woke up with pure evil on his mind. From the morning to the afternoon, Arjan played Call of Duty Black Ops 3 on his PlayStation. At about 4:30 p.m.-ish, Arjan went to his parents' home in Oak Harbor and ate dinner with them, and they said he was there for 15 minutes or so. Arjan and his parents then began to eat some reheated kebab and salad, and they said that he appeared quiet, but not agitated. At about 4:37 p.m., Arjan decided to excuse himself to use the bathroom. Instead of doing that, he went upstairs into his parents' room and into their closet. He then took a Ruger 10-22 semi-automatic rimfire rifle and a 25-round magazine. Next, Arjan went downstairs and right into the garage where he reached into a box and grabbed a bunch of .22 caliber ammunition. He put the gun and the ammo into the trunk of his car, and I'm unsure exactly how at this point his parents didn't hear him in the garage or whatever. But only a few minutes later, at about 4:43 p.m., Arjan told his parents that he's headed to work at the gym. He didn't work at a gym, but occasionally went to work out at a local gym, and sometimes while he was there, he helped to re-rack weights and clean equipment for some reason. Arjan would then leave his parents' home and go straight to the same gun shop he visited about a month prior. He once again attempted to buy a pistol, but this time a .45 caliber. Arjan asked the clerk about skipping background checks, and the employee refused to sell anything to Arjan, and so he left. Arjan then went back to his apartment, loaded the rifle's magazine, changed his clothes, and then got into his car to leave. What he would do next was absolutely sickening. Arjan drove his car about 40 minutes away to the Cascade Mall located in Burlington. He arrived at 6:10 p.m. and parked on the west side right in front of Chuck E. Cheese and the AMC, or movie theater. At 6:18 p.m., Arjan entered the mall and through the Chuck E. Cheese entrance, but empty-handed. He then went to the AMC, and at 6:22 p.m., he bought one ticket for the 6:25 p.m. showing of The Magnificent Seven. 1 minute later, at 6:23 p.m., Arjan walked into auditorium number 5 and then walked to the fire exit door and propped it open with his iPhone 6. 5 minutes later, at 6:28 p.m., Arjan then left the auditorium and went back into the lobby. This is when he was planning to go back to his car, and yeah. But 1 minute would go by, and at 6:29 p.m. is when someone inside auditorium number 5 found the iPhone jammed in the door. This person removed it and then took it to the front desk. Arjan, about a minute or two later, somehow realized that person removed his phone from the door, and so he went to the front desk asking about it, and this is when he retrieved the phone. Arjan then exited the mall back through the Chuck E. Cheese doors he came in through. He walked to his car, and from what I can tell, he moved his car right in front of the Macy's. Earlier, I mentioned Arjan's girlfriend worked at Macy's. This wasn't the same store, and I believe that Arjan knew that, but it's also a bit unclear there. So, Arjan then got out of his car, opened the trunk, grabbed the Ruger rifle out, and began to walk towards the store. At 6:52 p.m. is when Arjan entered the Macy's and started his rampage. He first spotted a Mount Vernon High School sophomore by the name of Sarai Lara. She was 16 years old. Arjan shouted out as he shot her, and then when he went to shoot her again, he yelled out the same thing. Next, he saw a guy named Wilton Chuck Egan, who was 61 years old, and he was with his wife, trying to get her to run. Arjan then walked up to Wilton, and Wilton said, "I'm sorry," but Arjan shot him, killing him. Wilton's wife was able to make it out unharmed. Arjan then ran up to one of the counters, and this is when he shot a woman named Shayla Martin, who was 52 years old and a longtime Macy's makeup artist. She was behind the register crouching. After this, Arjan walked up to 64-year-old Belinda Gaud, who was a Skagit County probation officer, and her mother, 94-year-old Ethel Beatrice Dotson, who was with her. These two ladies were at one of the counters and unfortunately had nowhere to go or way to run. Belinda held on to Beatrice and tried to shield her, but sadly both of these women were killed in the process. Arjan, after firing around 20 shots, dropped the rifle onto the counter and ran out of the mall. While running out, he saw another person and told that guy that there was a gunman. Little did that man know. But Arjan then ran to his car and left the scene. Meanwhile, police were called to a very gruesome scene with 5 innocent people murdered. Arjan would then go to a Shell gas station at 8:20 p.m. and pay $7.88 for some cigarettes and bottled water. About an hour later at 9:05 p.m., Arjan went to a drugstore in Seattle to buy a phone charger and some candy. He was still wearing the exact same shirt he just killed people in. Arjan would then drive around for a bit, and at 10:30 p.m., he parked his car near the Seattle Center and slept inside. The next morning, or September 24th of 2016, Arjan woke up, turned his phone on, and began to watch a news story about the mall shooting for about 6 minutes or so. His face was being plastered all over. Next, at 7:50 a.m., Arjan went to the Seattle Center in Pike Place Market. Here, he bought a hot dog and walked around for about 4 hours until 1:30 p.m. What Arjan did for the next hour or so isn't known, but I do believe someone spotted him and they called the police, but when the police arrived, he was gone. At about 3:15 p.m., Arjan left downtown Seattle and drove back to Oak Harbor to his apartment. This was about 58 miles or so. Arjan arrived at 4:12 p.m. and exited the car and locked the door. 8 minutes later, police found him walking on foot and they arrested him at 4:20 p.m. Arjan Chetan was now booked into the jail, and while awaiting trial, a lot happened. He was interviewed by police 2 times, and the first time, he kind of just acted dumb and as if he didn't really know what was going on, constantly contradicting his statements. The second interview was different though, and Arjan really told them all about how he was inspired by He told them what he did, why, and exactly how he got radicalized. He even said he could pinpoint the exact newspapers, etc. Arjan was considered to be a brainiac by a lot of people, and he absolutely knew what he was doing. It's sickening that he did that. But while awaiting trial in prison on Sunday, April 16th of 2017 at 6:50 p.m., Arjan was found deceased. Cowardly, he took himself out before his trial could finish. But unfortunately though, 5 people were killed in this tragedy, and they deserve to be remembered. Sarai Lara was 16 years old and a sophomore at Mount Vernon High School. At the age of 4, she beat stage 2 Wilms tumor, or a specific type of cancer. Sarai loved fashion and friends and family and talked about becoming a pediatric nurse. Sarai was strong-willed and a very sweet girl. Shayla Martin was 52 years old and a makeup artist at Macy's for 25 years. Customers of hers said that she could match anyone's skin tone and have you walking out feeling gorgeous. Shayla was a choir member at Life Church, and she loved doing crafts, notably making gift baskets for women's shelters. Shayla had a very warm personality and a great smile. She left behind a husband, 2 sons, and a bunch of grandchildren who called her Gigi. Wilton Chuck Egan was 61 years old and a Boeing avionics maintenance technician for well over 30 years. Chuck, as he liked to go by, also loved the Seahawks football team, going crabbing, and tinkering on vintage radios. He also had a bunch of fishing buddies who now sponsor an annual Chuck Egan Salmon Derby. Chuck was known to always help people and put other people before him, and that showed in his final moments. Chuck shielded his wife when Arjan came into the store, and he yelled, "Run, hun," to her. Belinda Gauld was 64 years old, and she was a senior probation officer for Snohomish County for about 25 years or so. Belinda was a Rotarian, or someone that helped others. She was the quilting club treasurer, and she planned to retire from her job the next year in 2017. Belinda was a very kind and brave woman who was said to have never given up on anyone. She left behind a husband of 43 years, 2 daughters, 3 siblings, and 2 grandchildren. Ethel Beatrice B. Dotson was 95 years old and inseparable with her daughter, Belinda. B, as she liked to go by, was born in 1921 and was the widow to a Navy machinist. In 2014, she moved to Arlington, Washington to live with Belinda. B was considered to be a stylish woman and loved matching her handbag and scarf sets. She played a game on Thursdays with other seniors called Contract Bridge. She loved going to church and tending to her flowers. B left behind 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and 11 great-grandchildren. Rest in peace to everyone that was killed on this tragic day. I pray that they are resting peacefully.